Zara, a skilled warrior from a distant galaxy, was used to the harsh realities of battle. She had fought countless wars, battled alien creatures, and led her people to victory time and time again. But nothing had prepared her for the betrayal she was about to face. Her once loyal comrades had turned on her, leaving her stranded on a cold, barren world. The planet's ice-covered surface stretched endlessly in every direction, with no signs of life, only the jagged rocks and sharp winds that howled across the desolation. Her ship had been shot down, crashing into the rocky landscape. The force of the impact had sent Zara flying from her seat, her body slamming into the cockpit and the world around her spinning into chaos. As the smoke cleared, she struggled to regain consciousness, blood trickling from a deep gash on her forehead. The ship's systems were offline, and Zara knew she was alone, completely alone. Her breathing was shallow, her vision blurry, and her body ached with every movement. Despite her advanced alien physiology, the injuries she had sustained were overwhelming. The thick metal armor that had once protected her now felt like a heavy burden, pinning her to the cold ground. Her chest tightened with panic as she tried to push herself up, only to collapse again in pain. She knew that she couldn't survive here for long. Her comrades, the ones who had once trusted her, had left her for dead. They had watched as she fell from the sky, not bothering to ensure her survival. She was nothing more than a casualty to them. Zara closed her eyes for a moment, the bitter cold biting through her armor, but even that couldn't numb the ache in her heart. She had fought for her people, giving everything she had only to be discarded like a broken tool. Her thoughts wandered to her family, her parents, her siblings, and how they would never know what had happened to her. They would never hear her final words or see her return as a hero. She had no chance of making it out alive. She didn't even know if anyone would find her. The planet was remote, far from any trade routes or outposts. She was nothing but a speck in the vastness of space. As her body continued to weaken, her breath grew more ragged, her consciousness slipping away like the fading light of a dying star. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the wilderness, the crunch of footsteps on snow. Her heart skipped a beat and her eyes fluttered open. Was it her enemies? Had they come back to finish what they had started? No. The footsteps were too slow, too careful. Zara's vision focused as much as it could, and she saw a figure approaching through the swirling snow. It was a human. A man, dressed in simple clothing that didn't match the alien surroundings, his face rugged but determined. He looked like someone who had seen hardships, yet there was something kind in his eyes as they met hers. Zara's instincts told her to fight, to defend herself, but her body was too weak to move. She could barely lift her hand, let alone defend herself from an approaching stranger. The man stopped a few feet away, kneeling down beside her, his breath visible in the cold air. Zara tried to speak, to warn him away, but all that came out was a faint groan. She was too weak to do anything but lie there, helpless. He didn't move away. Instead, he reached out, his hand shaking slightly as he touched her armor. His voice was gentle, full of concern as he spoke to her, though Zara could barely hear him. "Don't worry, you're not alone," he said, his words almost like a promise. "I'm going to help you." Zara's mind reeled. She had been left behind, abandoned by her own kind, yet here was a human, an enemy species, offering help. She had fought against humans before, and she knew their reputation. They were fierce, unpredictable, and often ruthless. She had never considered the possibility of a human showing kindness, especially not to someone like her. But this human wasn't acting like an enemy. He wasn't here to finish what her people had started. No, he was offering something she hadn't felt in a long time. Compassion. The realization hit her like a shockwave, and for a moment, she almost couldn't believe it. She had spent so much time fighting, so much time preparing for battle, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for, to be valued, to be seen as more than just a soldier. The human carefully removed her damaged helmet, revealing her alien features. Zara winced at the movement, the pain from her wounds flaring up, but the human didn't seem to mind. He focused, solely on her, his eyes scanning her injuries, looking for a way to help. I'm not leaving you here, he said firmly. I don't know how you got here, but I'm going to get you out. Zara's mind was clouded, her vision swimming as the human's words settled into her consciousness. Was this real? Was she truly being rescued by a human? She couldn't understand why he would do this. What did he want from her? She had nothing to offer him in return. She was a broken warrior left to die. Yet despite all of that, this human had made a decision. He had made a choice to help. And in that moment, Zara realized that she wasn't completely alone. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. With her strength failing her, Zara closed her eyes once more, allowing the human's presence to fill the space around her. She couldn't understand why he was doing this, but for the first time since she had crashed on this planet, she allowed herself to believe that there was still a chance to survive, to find redemption, to maybe even find something more. The human gently picked her up, cradling her in his arms as he began to move through the snow. Zara's mind grew foggy again, but her last thought before she drifted into unconsciousness was a simple one. Maybe the human wasn't so different after all. Zara's mind slowly began to stir as the cold that had once overwhelmed her body now seemed distant, replaced by the warmth of a soft fire and the scent of fresh earth. Her eyelids fluttered open, and she immediately noticed that she was no longer lying on the barren, icy ground. Instead, she was in a simple but warm shelter. The walls were made of crude wood and animal skins, and the smell of something cooking filled the air. For a moment, she thought she had been transported into another world, a world far removed from the brutality she had known for so long. The human man, who had saved her, was sitting at a small table across from her, sharpening a piece of metal with a whetstone. His movements were precise, but there was a calmness to them that suggested he was used to this kind of solitude. Zara tried to sit up but winced as pain shot through her side, and her body betrayed her once again. Her alien physiology wasn't as adaptable to injury as she had once thought. The wounds from her crash had left her weak and vulnerable, and she was reminded of the fragility of her existence in this strange world. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to relax, and tried to gather her strength. The thought of the betrayal still haunted her. Her comrades had left her, to die without a second thought. They had seen her as expendable, just another soldier in their war. Zara felt a wave of bitterness wash over her. How had it come to this? How had she gone from being a leader of armies to being nothing more than a broken, abandoned soldier? Easy, there. The human's voice broke through her thoughts, and she looked up to see him standing beside her, his hand hovering over her shoulder as if he was ready to support her. You're safe now. Don't try to move too fast. You've been out for a while. Zara's lips parted, but she had no words. She wasn't sure what to say to him. After everything that had happened, after everything she had seen and fought for, she felt small in his presence. She had always been a warrior, never vulnerable, never in need of help. But now, here she was, relying on a human for survival. The human, noticing her silence, pulled up a small stool and sat beside her. I'm Ethan, by the way. You were in bad shape when I found you. You've been out for almost 2 days. Zara looked at him warily, still unsure of his motives. Ethan's dark eyes were warm, and there was something kind in his expression that made her heart ache. How could he possibly care for her? A creature from another world who had been a part of the very war that had destroyed his people. How could a human show such kindness? I didn't know if you'd make it, Ethan continued, his voice steady. But I couldn't just leave you there. I'm not sure what brought you here, but I'm guessing it wasn't by choice. Zara's gaze drifted to the corner of the room where her damaged armor lay in a heap. It was a reminder of the life she had left behind, the life of a warrior, a leader. But now, here, in this humble shelter, it seemed so distant, so insignificant. She didn't know what to do with herself, who she was anymore. You don't need to talk if you're not ready, Ethan said, understanding the silence that lingered between them. But I want you to know you're not alone here. I'll help you however I can. You can rest, recover. You've got a second chance now." Zara's chest tightened. The idea of a second chance seemed so foreign. The thought of rebuilding, of trusting someone again, made her feel vulnerable. Yet she couldn't deny the warmth she felt from Ethan's words. There was no deception in his voice, no ulterior motive. He wasn't asking for anything in return, and that in itself was a rare thing in her world. "Why are you helping me?" Zara found her voice at last, her words raw with the emotions she had kept buried for so long. "Why a human? Why not just leave me to die like my own people did?" Ethan's expression softened. He looked at her. For a long moment, his eyes reflecting a sadness that mirrored her own. "Because everyone deserves a chance," he said quietly. "Even someone like you. I've seen enough pain in my life to know what it feels like to be abandoned. I couldn't let that happen to you." Zara stared at him, still processing the gravity of his words. She was used to the cold, calculated logic of war. Survival meant everything and emotions meant nothing. But Ethan, this human who had no reason to care for her, was showing her something she had never truly known: compassion. As the fire crackled softly in the background, Zara's mind began to clear. Perhaps, in this moment, she could let go of the weight of her past, if only for a brief moment. Maybe she could allow herself to heal, to find something new amidst the wreckage. The idea of a new beginning felt terrifying, but it also held a glimmer of hope. "I can't go back to my people," Zara whispered, her voice tinged with regret. "They left me behind. They betrayed me." Ethan's hand gently rested on her arm, offering comfort without words. "You don't need to go back," he said softly. "You're here now. You have a future if you want one." Zara's eyes filled with tears, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, or how long she would be able to stay in this human's world, but for the first time in days she felt like she had a choice, a chance to live, to start again. The warmth of the fire, the kindness in Ethan's eyes, and the overwhelming sense of safety in this small shelter filled Zara with a quiet determination. Maybe, just maybe, there was something more for her beyond the battlefield. Ethan smiled as he watched Zara's expression shift from fear to something akin to hope. He had given her a second chance, but he knew that in some ways she had already given herself the greatest gift of all, the possibility of redemption, and that was just the beginning. The wind howled through the narrow pass, whipping the snow into a blinding frenzy. Zara's breath came out in quick, shallow gasps, and despite the heavy furs she had been wrapped in, the cold seemed to seep into her very bones. She had never thought of herself as weak, but the journey was taking its toll. Every step felt like a battle against her own body, her alien muscles protesting the effort after days of recovery. The bruises from the crash still ached, and though her injuries had healed, the exhaustion was relentless. But she wasn't alone. Ethan, always just a few steps ahead, glanced over his shoulder at her, his eyes filled with concern. He had taken the lead in their journey across this frozen wasteland, knowing that she was still too weak to guide them. Her survival was no longer just a matter of her own strength. It was now a shared responsibility, and Ethan had taken it upon himself to get them both to safety. "We're almost there," he called back to her, his voice barely audible over the fierce wind. "Just a little further." Zara didn't respond immediately. She was focused on keeping her footing as the icy ground beneath her became increasingly treacherous. The mountains loomed in the distance, jagged peaks that seemed to pierce the very sky. The safety they sought was somewhere beyond those mountains, but Zara didn't know if she had the strength to make it. Her mind raced with questions. What was the point of all this? What awaited them on the other side? Would they be safe? Or was this all just a fool's errand, a desperate attempt to outrun the inevitable? Ethan turned again, his eyes scanning the horizon. He could see the doubts in Zara's eyes, the way her pace was slowing, the way her strength was faltering. But he had seen that same look in his own eyes many times. The fear of the unknown, the uncertainty that plagued every step of the journey. And yet, he kept moving forward, determined to push past it. "We'll make it," he assured her, though he wasn't entirely sure of that himself. The truth was he had no idea what dangers lay ahead. The world they were in was unforgiving. If Zara had been left behind by her people, there was no reason to believe anyone would come looking for them. Still, he couldn't stop now. He had made a promise to her, and he intended to keep it. Zara nodded, forcing herself to keep moving, one foot in front of the other. She felt the weight of her past pressing on her, the years of combat, of surviving by her wits and her strength, alone. But she had been wrong. The real test of survival wasn't physical strength. It was about trust. And for the first time, Zara found herself trusting someone who was human, someone who didn't owe her anything, and yet still refused to let her fall. The snowstorm intensified, and soon visibility was reduced to mere inches. Zara's heart raced as she struggled to keep up. Ethan had become a blur in the distance, his form almost swallowed by the storm. She wanted to call out to him, to ask him to slow down, but her throat was dry, and her voice seemed to have left her. The biting cold had numbed her senses, and everything felt distant, as though she were caught in some nightmare she couldn't escape. And then she heard something, a low guttural growl that sent a shiver down her spine. Zara's senses snapped to attention, and she felt the familiar weight of her pulse quicken. Instinctively, her hand went to the blaster at her side, though she knew it was useless in this situation. Her alien weapons had been left behind with her ship. All she had now was her wits and her trust in Ethan. The growl came again, louder this time, closer. Zara's eyes darted around the snowstorm, searching for the source of the sound. And then, through the swirling snow, she saw it. Two glowing eyes staring back at her from the shadows, low to the ground. She froze. A creature, large and powerful, was slowly advancing toward her. Its fur was matted with snow, and its sharp, jagged teeth gleamed in the dim light. It was a beast, a predator, and Zara was its prey. Panic surged through her, but she was too weak to run. She glanced around frantically, looking for Ethan, but he was nowhere in sight. The creature took another step forward, and she realized that if she didn't act, she wouldn't make it out alive. She was alone. Just as the creature lunged toward her, a shot rang out through the air, sharp and clear, echoing in the silence of the storm. The beast staggered, its roar of pain ringing in Zara's ears. Ethan emerged from the swirling snow, his rifle raised and steady. His shot had hit the creature squarely in the chest, and it was retreating, its once menacing eyes now filled with confusion. Zara's heart was racing as she watched Ethan lower his weapon and rush toward her. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Zara nodded, though her hands were shaking. "I thought I was going to die." Ethan knelt beside her, his expression softening. "You're not going to die, not while I'm here." His words, simple as they were, resonated deep within her. She had been on her own for so long, fighting alone, never trusting anyone. But now, for the first time, Zara felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. A small flicker, but it was there. As they continued on their journey, Zara found herself relying on Ethan more and more, not just for protection, but for something else, something she couldn't name yet. The more she learned about him, the more she saw the strength in his kindness. It wasn't just the weapon he carried or the survival skills he had that made him strong. It was his ability to care for someone else, someone he didn't even know, without question. And as they pressed on, facing the elements, the dangers, and the uncertainty of their path, Zara knew that this journey was far from over. But she also knew that for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. And that, in itself, was a victory. Zara's journey had been long and grueling, but as she and Ethan approached the edge of the frozen wilderness, something changed within her. The air grew warmer, the biting cold of the mountains giving way to a milder breeze. The snow had lessened, replaced by patches of soft green grass that were foreign to her, and the distant hum of life filled the air. They had made it through the worst, and ahead of them lay a future unknown, but full of possibility. The small village they had reached was a far cry from the cold, unforgiving world they had left behind. The houses were simple but sturdy, built from wood and stone, nestled along the banks of a quiet river. The peaceful atmosphere was a stark contrast to the chaos that Zara had known her whole life. She felt like an alien in this world, out of place among the humans, unsure of what role she would play now that her mission had ended and her past had been shattered. Ethan had told her they would be safe here. He had known the village for years, having grown up in the surrounding forests. He spoke of it fondly, but Zara wasn't sure what kind of life she could have here. What would she do? How could she adapt to this peaceful existence after the violence she had known? Zara stood at the edge of the village staring into the distance as Ethan went ahead to speak with the villagers. Her eyes, once filled with the sharp focus of a warrior, were now clouded with uncertainty. She had given up everything, her position, her people, her pride. And for what? A life that seemed so simple, so foreign to her. "You're looking at the world like it's a battlefield." Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to reality. She turned to see him standing a few feet away, holding a bundle of firewood in his arms. He smiled at her, his usual calm demeanor still in place. "This isn't a fight anymore, Zara. You're free." Zara's heart skipped a beat at his words. Free. That was a word she hadn't heard in years. Freedom had never meant much to her when she had been part of the war. Her life had always been controlled by duty, by the demands of battle. But now, in this quiet village, she was free to choose her own path. "I don't know what to do now," she confessed, her voice quieter than she intended. "My whole life has been about fighting. I don't know what comes after." Ethan lowered the firewood to the ground and took a step closer to her. He didn't speak immediately, but there was understanding in his eyes. His words were measured, but they held a deep truth. "After the fight is over, there's only life left. You don't need to know everything right now. You just need to live. Be here, with the people who are offering you a second chance." Zara looked at the village again, taking in the warm golden light that now bathed the fields. There were children playing by the river, their laughter filling the air. The villagers worked together, sharing tasks, helping one another. It was the kind of peaceful existence Zara had never known. She had always been trained to see others as either allies or enemies, but here there were no sides, no battles to fight. It was just life. For the first time in a long while, Zara felt the weight of her past lighten, if only a little. She realized that her journey wasn't just about escaping the past. It was about finding a new purpose, something that had nothing to do with war and everything to do with survival, connection, and trust. Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts again. "I've been talking to the village elders. They said you're welcome to stay here. You can help with whatever you want. The people here, they don't care where you came from, they care about who you are now." Zara nodded slowly, the words settling deep within her. She could stay here. She could build a new life. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt possible. She didn't have to be a soldier anymore. She didn't have to carry the weight of her past with her. The only thing she had to do now was decide what kind of person she wanted to be. The next few days were a blur. Ethan introduced her to the villagers, many of whom greeted her with warmth, curiosity, and kindness. They had heard her story, about the alien warrior, left for dead, who had been saved by a human. They didn't care about the war she had fought, in the battles she had won or lost. They only cared about the person she was now. Zara helped where she could. She had never been one for manual labor, but she quickly learned the ways of the village. She helped with fishing, harvesting crops, and even learned how to build simple structures with the villagers. Every day she found herself growing stronger, not just physically but emotionally. Her bond with Ethan deepened as well. He became her guide, her anchor in this strange new world. They shared stories of their pasts, their hopes, their fears. He didn't see her as the alien warrior she had been. He saw her as Zara, a person trying to build a new life just like him. But the road to healing wasn't easy. There were days when Zara would wake up in the middle of the night, her mind plagued with memories of her battles, of the pain and loss she had experienced. On those nights, she would find solace in the quiet companionship of Ethan, who would sit beside her and listen without judgment. He never tried to offer solutions, only his presence, and that alone was enough. One evening, as they sat by the fire, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Zara turned to Ethan, a question on her lips. "Do you think I'm ready for this? For a new life?" Ethan smiled, his eyes warm and understanding. "I think you've always been ready. You just needed to see it for yourself." Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. For the first time she believed him. She was ready, not just for survival, but for something more, a new beginning, full of possibility. As the stars began to twinkle in the clear night sky, Zara allowed herself to let go of the weight of her past. She wasn't defined by the wars she had fought or the battles she had lost. She was something new now. She was a woman with a second chance, a chance to live, to heal, and to find peace. And in this small village, with Ethan by her side, Zara knew that the future was hers to shape.